1, A Boy's Early Dreams. Hello, everyone. I'm Tom, and I'm excited to share this amazing story with you today. Let me tell you about a little boy named Xi Jinping, born on June 15, 1953, in Beijing, China. Picture this: a curious child with bright eyes, always asking questions about everything around him. Xi Jinping's father was Xi Zhongxun, an important government leader. His mother was Qixun, a caring woman who loved books and learning. From a very young age, Xi Jinping saw how education was important in his family. His parents always had books in their house. They talked about history, politics, and culture every day at dinner. As a small child, Xi Jinping attended the best schools in Beijing. He was a good student who liked to read Chinese literature and history. His teachers noticed that he was different from other children. He asked deep questions. He wanted to understand not just what happened, but why it happened. But here's where the story gets interesting. In 1962, when Xi Jinping was only 9 years old, something terrible happened to his family. His father fell from power in the government. This meant that Xi Jinping's comfortable life in Beijing was about to change completely. The family lost their nice house, their books, and their comfortable life. This early experience taught Xi Jinping an important lesson. Life can change very quickly. Nothing is permanent. Education and knowledge, however, stay with you forever. Nobody can take away what you learn. This idea would become very important in his life story. Chapter 2, The Difficult Years. Now, let me tell you about the most difficult time in Xi Jinping's education journey. When his father lost his government position, the family's life became very hard. They had to move from their comfortable home in Beijing to a much smaller place. During this time, China was going through the Cultural Revolution, which started in 1966. This was a very difficult period in Chinese history when many schools closed, books were burned, teachers were sent away. Young people were told that traditional education was bad. Xi Jinping was a teenager during this time. Imagine being 13 years old and watching your world fall apart. His father was sent to prison. His sister was so sad that she killed herself. The family was broken and scared. But here's what makes Xi Jinping's story special. Even during these terrible times, he never stopped learning. When schools closed, he found other ways to educate himself. He read books in secret. He asked older people to tell him stories about Chinese history. He learned by observing the world around him. Xi Jinping later said that these difficult years taught him more than any classroom could. He learned about suffering, about strength, and about how ordinary people live their lives. This was a different kind of education, not from books, but from real-life experiences. Many young people during this time became angry or gave up on learning. But Xi Jinping was different. He understood that knowledge was power, and he was determined to keep learning no matter what happened around him. Chapter 3, Learning in the Countryside. In 1969, something happened that would change Xi Jinping's life forever. He was sent to work in a small village called Liangchaya in Shanxi province. He was only 15 years old, just a teenager from the big city of Beijing. Picture this: a young man who had lived his whole life in the capital city, suddenly finding himself in a poor village where people lived in caves cut into the mountainside. There was no electricity, no running water, and very little food. The work was hard. farming, carrying water, and taking care of animals, at first, Xi Jinping struggled. His hands were soft from city life, and the hard farm work made them bleed. The food was different, the dialect was difficult to understand. Some local people didn't trust this young man from Beijing. But here's where Xi Jinping's real education began. Instead of complaining, he decided to learn everything he could about rural life. He watched the farmers carefully. He asked questions about growing crops, about the weather, about local customs. He learned to speak the local dialect. During these 7 years in the village, Xi Jinping received a special kind of education that no university could provide. He learned how poor people lived. He saw how hard they worked just to survive. He understood their hopes and dreams for a better life. At night, after long days of farm work, Xi Jinping would read by candlelight. He borrowed books from anyone who had them. He read classical Chinese literature, Western philosophy, and political theory. The other villagers thought he was strange for reading so much. But Xi Jinping knew that books would be his bridge to a better future. This period taught him that true education comes from combining book knowledge with real-world experience. You cannot understand people's problems by just reading about them. You must live among them and share their struggles. Chapter 4, University Dreams Come True. After 7 long years in the countryside, something wonderful happened to Xi Jinping. In 1975, he finally got the chance to attend university. But this was not easy. He had to apply 3 times before he was accepted. The first 2 times, Xi Jinping's application was rejected because of his family background. Remember, his father was still considered a political enemy. But Xi Jinping never gave up. He kept studying, kept preparing, and kept applying. Finally, Tsinghua University in Beijing accepted him to study chemical engineering. Imagine his joy. After years of hard farm work and studying by candlelight, he was finally going to receive a proper university education. Xi Jinping was 22 years old when he started university, older than most other students. But this age difference was actually helpful. While other students were just learning about life, Xi Jinping had already lived it. He had experienced poverty, hard work, and real challenges. At Tsinghua University, Xi Jinping was known as a serious student. He spent most of his time in the library. He read not just his engineering textbooks, but also books about history, philosophy, and politics. His professors remembered him as someone who always asked thoughtful questions. But the most important thing about Xi Jinping's university years was not what he learned in the classroom. It was how he learned to think. University taught him to analyze problems, to look at issues from different angles, and to find solutions. Xi Jinping also learned about leadership during these years. He was elected as a student leader, which gave him experience in organizing people and solving problems. These skills would be very important in his future career. When he graduated in 1979 with a degree in chemical engineering, Xi Jinping had completed a remarkable educational journey. From a village farmer to a university graduate, this transformation showed the power of never giving up on learning. Chapter 5, Learning Through Work. After graduating from Tsinghua University, Xi Jinping faced an important choice: what to do with his life. Many of his classmates wanted comfortable jobs in big cities or important government positions, but Xi Jinping made a different decision. He chose to work as a secretary to a military leader named Zheng Biao. This might seem like a simple job, but Xi Jinping understood something important. Working closely with experienced leaders would give him a special kind of education. As a secretary, Xi Jinping learned how government really works. He attended important meetings, read classified documents, and observed how decisions are made. He saw how leaders think about complex problems and how they balance different interests. During this time, Xi Jinping also continued his formal education. He enrolled in a part-time graduate program at Tsinghua University, studying Marxist theory and political economy. This shows us something important about Xi Jinping's character. He never stopped learning, even when he was busy with work. But the real education during these years came from practical experience. Xi Jinping learned about different regions of China, about economic problems, and about international relations. He traveled with senior leaders and saw how China was changing during the reform period of the 1980s. Xi Jinping also learned about patience during this time. He watched older leaders carefully, studying their methods and their decision-making processes. He understood that leadership is not just about giving orders, it's about understanding people and situations deeply. This period taught Xi Jinping that education never stops. Even after finishing university, he continued to learn every day through his work, his reading, and his interactions with experienced people. He developed the habit of learning from everyone he met, whether they were high government officials or ordinary workers. Chapter 6: Advanced Studies and Doctorate. Now, let me tell you about a fascinating part of Xi Jinping's educational journey that many people don't know about. In 1998, when Xi Jinping was already 45 years old and a successful government leader, he made a surprising decision. He decided to pursue a doctorate degree. And why would someone who was already successful want to go back to school? Xi Jinping understood that the world was changing rapidly. China was becoming more connected to the global economy. New challenges required new knowledge and new ways of thinking. Xi Jinping enrolled in a doctoral program at Tsinghua University, studying law and political science. But this was not ordinary university study. As a busy government leader, he had to balance his studies with his full-time job managing important provinces. Picture this. During the day, Xi Jinping would be in meetings, making decisions about economic development, environmental protection, and social issues. At night and on weekends, he would be writing academic papers, conducting research, and studying legal theory. His doctoral dissertation was about rural economic development and agricultural modernization. This topic was not chosen randomly. It connected directly to his early experiences in the countryside and his work as a provincial leader. Xi Jinping was using academic study to better understand practical problems. What's remarkable about Xi Jinping's doctoral studies is how he combined theory with practice. His academic research was informed by his real-world experience managing millions of people. His practical work was enhanced by academic theories and international examples. This shows us something important about lifelong learning. Education is not something you finish when you're young. True leaders continue to study and learn throughout their lives. adapting to new challenges and new opportunities. When Xi Jinping received his doctorate in 2002, he had demonstrated something powerful. No matter how successful you become, there is always more to learn. Chapter 7, Learning from International Experience. An important part of Xi Jinping's education came from learning about other countries and cultures. Throughout his career, he traveled extensively and studied how other nations solved their problems. One of the most important trips in kind of Xi Jinping's educational journey happened in 1985 when he was 32 years old. He led a delegation to Iowa in the United States to study American agriculture. This was Xi Jinping's first time outside China, and it opened his eyes to different ways of thinking and living. In Iowa, Xi Jinping stayed with American families, ate American food, and learned about American farming methods. He was particularly interested in how American farmers used technology to increase productivity. He asked hundreds of questions about everything from crop rotation to agricultural finance. But Xi Jinping learned more than just farming techniques. He learned about American society, American values, and American democracy. He observed how Americans solve disputes, how they make decisions, and how they balance individual freedom with social responsibility. Over the years, Xi Jinping continued to study international examples. He learned about Singapore's economic development model, about European environmental protection policies, and about how different countries manage urbanization and modernization. What made Xi Jinping different from many other leaders was his ability to learn from other countries without simply copying them. He understood that every country has its own culture, history, and challenges. The goal was not to become like America or Europe, but to learn useful lessons that could be adapted to Chinese-specific situation. This international education taught Xi Jinping about the importance of cultural exchange and mutual understanding. He learned that different countries can learn from each other while still maintaining their own unique characteristics and values. Chapter 8, Teaching Others and Leading Change. The final chapter of our story shows how Xi Jinping's lifelong education prepared him to become a teacher and leader for others. When he became China's top leader in 2012, Xi Jinping brought all of his educational experiences together to guide his leadership style. One of Xi Jinping's first priorities as a leader was education reform. He remembered his own struggles to get an education during difficult times, and he wanted to make sure that all Chinese children would have better opportunities to learn. Xi Jinping launched programs to improve rural schools, to provide better training for teachers, and to make university education more accessible to students from poor families. He understood that education is the foundation of a country's future success. But Xi Jinping's approach to education was broader than just schools and universities. He believed that the whole society should be a learning environment. He encouraged government officials to study continuously, to learn from international examples, and to adapt to changing circumstances. This meant adapting to changing circumstances. Xi Jinping also became a teacher himself. He wrote books, gave speeches, and shared his ideas about governance, development, and international cooperation. He often told stories from his own educational journey to inspire young people to never give up on learning. One of Xi Jinping's most famous ideas is that China should become a learning society, where everyone continues to educate themselves throughout their lives. This concept comes directly from his own experience of continuous learning and growth. Today, when Xi Jinping meets with world leaders, visits schools, or addresses the Chinese people, he draws on all the lessons from his educational journey, his early reading in Beijing, his practical education in the countryside, his university studies, his work experience, his doctoral research, and his international learning. But that notion of falling into a particular learning, his story shows us that education is not a destination. It's a lifelong journey of growth, discovery, and service to others.
Wow, what an incredible journey Thomas shared with us today. From a young boy reading by candlelight in a rural village to becoming one of the world's most influential leaders, Xi Jinping's story shows us the true power of lifelong learning. The most important lesson from today's story is this: education can happen anywhere and at any time. Whether you're in a fancy classroom in Beijing, working hard in a countryside village, or leading a nation, there are always opportunities to learn and grow. Xi Jinping's journey reminds us that real education combines book knowledge with life experience, combines learning from your own culture with learning from other cultures, and combines personal growth with service to others. So, my friends, as you continue your own English learning journey, remember Xi Jinping's example. Be curious about the world around you, never stop asking questions, learn from difficult experiences as well as good ones, and most importantly, use your education to help others and make the world a better place. Thanks for sticking around till the end of the story. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss a new story. Have a wonderful day, take care, and see you next time.